On the first day when the unit arrived to these sites, nobody knew the size of what was going on. Nobody expected this.
So can you start by introducing yourself? Tell us about what you do in general and where you're from.
My name is Asaf. I live in Jerusalem. I work as a tour guide, mostly in Jerusalem, in the Old City.
So can you tell us where you were on October 7th, what you heard, and how your unit eventually got deployed?
So October 7th, Simchat Torah, here in Yerushalayim, we were home. My in-laws were visiting from America, and we heard the sirens. That's what, I was up already, ran to take the kids into a safe area that we have at home. And just over the day, we started realizing the news, what's developing. I took my phone with me, knowing that I might be called up. What happened eventually is that the unit was called up before we had the official call. The unit already got to base, and that evening already started to discover the disaster. Down with the first site that the unit was active at is the Nova, the party. And after that, next day, the unit started working in Kfar Aza, and mostly entering into buildings that were damaged. Again, that's the part of the expertise of the unit, is understanding building. We have engineers, structural engineers in every team. We have medical teams, and of course the rescuers and part of the intelligence of the unit. So they started working in Kfar Aza, searching through some of the homes there, rescuing, I believe, over 66 bodies of Israelis, taking them out. And only on Monday, once some of the battles went down a bit, the unit started operating in Be'eri, in Kibbutz Be'eri. And for basically the next month and a half, that was the main focus of the unit. I'll just say that originally the mission of the unit has to do with collapsing of buildings, disaster sites, whether it's civilian disasters or by war. But nothing like the unit experienced in these days. This is something that no one was prepared for. Some of the experience of the unit is dealing with mass casualties. So that did come in handy. And one of the reasons the unit got a big responsibility in these sites is the ability to deal with and identifying the bodies, but the ability to bring some closure to the families after in the great disaster. That is a big part of what the unit knows how to do.
Can you tell us about, after sort of identification and the initial discoveries you made in these places, what your role then became afterwards?
So personally, I arrived on the third day of the reservists call. After the first few days of evacuating, again, alongside Zaka and the rest of the organizations that were there, and the IDF has other units dealing with deceased people with casualties. Once the first 2-3 days were over, when I arrived, most of the clear scenes that we saw were dead terrorists all over, and then the clearing of those bodies that was done. Sure enough, the unit started working on the structures, the homes that were destroyed, either part of the attack itself or in the attempt of the IDF to stop the terrorists who were hiding in the homes with hostages inside. And some of those homes collapsed on top of the hostages or were burnt down with them inside. And basically the unit took responsibility on searching through those homes. And first of all, starting with the structural engineering and allowing bomb squads to go in. Many of them were booby-trapped or had lots of explosives left behind. And just searching through the rubble for any remains. At this point, we're talking about smaller pieces that might help with identifying someone. And again, as I said before, that would be bringing the families some, we can't bring the person back, but bringing some ability of knowing their faith, maybe bringing some to burial, the ability to have some closure of such a terrible story for a family that in other case would be hanging for weeks, if not more, to try and learn what happened to their loved ones. In one of the cases, I'll share, we had there was a house that had quite a few hostages inside, and most of them were identified except for one girl. It took over a month, but eventually they found the girl. obviously not in the, it's tragic and sad, but the family was able to bring her to burial. That was looking for a specific story, because we count the amount of people who are there. We're able to go and search in the building. And so that's one story.
Was there any part that was hopeful or something that gave you strength to keep doing such a difficult job?
I'll say the first 2 weeks were much, harder in the way that you're supposed to focus on your job. That means searching through the buildings, very technical work. You're not looking necessarily at the story of each specific home or each specific family. You're just searching for remains. You're following certain leads that we have, certain types of smell, flies. I know it's not even easy to describe. But that's the first 2 weeks where we're still expecting to find and looking for that. In the third week, when we started realizing what's going on, the commander of the unit basically gave another order, which was to look through the homes that were searched already and were broken before the rain comes, to try and save any memories from those homes, whether it's photo albums, pictures off the walls, jewelry, anything that might be of a value of emotional or memories, either for survivors from those homes who can't come and take it, or for families of the people who did not survive, but this would be their last memory. So we're searching through the rubble and picking up stones and picking up even letters that people wrote, and learning about the people over there. So that was a big change in the mission, from kind of disconnecting from the homes we're searching through to start focusing on each specific home. Who lives there? What are their names? Where they're from? Think in their way, where would they hide valuables that we can now save for their families? That, for me personally, was a very meaningful mission, because we really got into people's stories. One of the days we were sitting there searching through a home, the house looked terrible. I mean, if you looked at this at first glance, you don't know who walked out alive from that home. And we started going through a 75-year-old lady's home. She was a painter. I started taking the paintings off the wall. Some of them had bullet holes through them. And just collecting anything. I understood she was born in Hungary, her name, her birth certificate. She's 75 years old. And suddenly, after 2 hours of working on those homes, some of them are really barely anything left after the destruction. A guy walks by, kind of a lone wolf, and apparently that's his mother's home. And I already recognize his name because we just collected his pictures as a child in the kibbutz. And once he said his name, I said, "Oh, we just went through your home." He said, "Thank God his mother survived. She climbed after 36 hours out of the bomb shelter. There were battles going around." Said the bullet in the house, the damage in the house was done by the IDF when they took out the terrorists that were hiding in that home. His mother, thank God, 75 years old, climbed out safe from the bomb shelter. And he came through the fields, through different ways, to save anything that he could. So we just handed over the bags that we already packed for him. There were other things he wanted to do, so we just sat with him for another hour or so through his mother's home, and we packed in boxes, helped him take it to the car. So at least one family, we got to see the faces, and end with a more hopeful story, a story of someone who actually survived. And here we're able to provide their memories, that, they didn't lose everything. So that was a very uplifting story.
Can I ask, what's the most difficult part of the job, and what's the most rewarding part of the job that you do overall in your experience?
I think both are the same. The unit is training to do something that nobody wants to actually do. Nobody wants to have a disaster. Nobody wants to be active in a disaster site. We're not looking forward for disasters, but when they happen, to be there and be able to bring some certainty to the family in such a time is the goal, and that's uplifting. Even telling a family the worst message, that their loved one did not make it, is in a way allowing them to have some closure.
When I speak to people in interviews, a lot of them mention Jewish unity as being something prevalent and something they've seen a lot of, especially in such a tragic time, just some light, some hope against everything else. So in your experience, what sort of coming together have you seen?
For me, the bigger big warm feeling that I was getting was from people I guided over the years. I got messages from people I guided in 2012. I was on your birthright trip. You were my guide here or there. I guided them for one day and they send a message. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you. People continue sending messages throughout the war. It's now almost a month and a half. We've been getting messages every week. Some people once a week, twice a week before Shabbat, tell us how you are, just praying for you. That's really fills up the heart with warmth because it gives us an understanding we're not alone in this. This is not just an Israeli internal story with our neighbors. This is a big Jewish story that's affecting all of us Jews around the world. And I'll also add and say non-Jews. I've been getting beautiful messages from non-Jews that I guided, just people that encountered the story of Israel through an open place and got connected to what's going on here. And for me, that's not only rewarding for all the work that I've done over the years, but really feels like a big support in these days. People sent gifts to our families even, not even to the soldiers. People asked me the first week, 2 weeks, what can we do? How can we donate? We're looking forward to come to Israel. So just all across, I felt a lot of warmth, a lot of support from outside. And that was for me, I'd say a larger scope of the unity of the Jewish people, not only in Miluim, which is obvious for me, but Jews from around the world who came together for this. I think that's something incredible.
For people who are in the diaspora, who are, spread around the world and they can't help in a direct way by physically being here, or at least not yet. As an Israeli, what helps you the most from people in the diaspora? What do you want from the Jewish family around the world?
What do I want from the Jewish family around the world? First of all, to know, to be part of the story. And that's what I end many of my tours before this, who are the Jewish people? At the end, it's one big family. And times like this show this to us. So I just want people to know and be part of the story. If it's reading, if it's sharing with their relatives on social media, whatever people feel comfortable with. But really in the long run, I think just come visit. Make this your home. It doesn't mean, I'm not pushing people to make Aliyah. I know it's not easy, but make sure to have a visit here, to bring your children here, to have some connection, to strengthen the connection to Israel. And all of this on the day after, because the day after, I think, will be when a lot of people realize also what's actually going on. I think we still don't have the full picture. People are still missing. People are still looking for the kidnapped relatives. Soldiers are still in the battlefield. There's a lot of uncertainty in this time. When all of this sinks down, I think the people who will be able to support then, to whether support financially, families who will need to start everything from the beginning, families who lost everything from what I've seen, or just come here, come show your support, come visit, book a tour to Israel. I would say just come, make sure to build your connection with Israel, because the understanding is that this is not only an Israeli story, not only our story, this is the Jewish people's story. And if Israel survives this, I'm sure we will, but when Israel survives this is part of the story of the Jewish people. Just to remember that.
When you did do tours around Israel, what were some of the themes you tried to bring out in your tours that you gave people?
First of all, the connection. Yerushalayim is a great story. I guide all over. I'm licensed to guide all over. I used to guide all over. In the last 7 years, I've been focusing much more on Yerushalayim. Guiding in Jerusalem, in the marketplace, and in the Kotel tunnels, and in Ir David. I'm a guide over there in those sites. And just the old city and Jerusalem itself, I feel, has so much depth for all the people around the world. And mostly the story of connection, a place that everyone can connect, whether it's non-Jews with the different religions, their different traditions. They look at Jerusalem, everybody sees their story in Jerusalem. And as Jews, this is a place we became a people. This is where this is who we are. And this is where we've come back to. That's the story I've been sharing. And I've been thinking about this also in the last few days, actually. I guide a lot of soldiers also. Before this, I got through the Kotel and through other projects. I got a lot of IDF units, tours in Jerusalem. The idea to bring them to the Kotel, bring them to the old city, tell them stories about heroes of the past, to strengthen their spirit, their connection to the mission, right? Understand why they're doing what they're doing today. And now I feel I need to bring the Jewish people, the Kotel, all these stories to these guys, these soldiers of 2023, who have shown us what it means, unity, have shown us what it means to be dedicated to the mission, to protect, to defend Israel with their lives. I feel these soldiers that I've been meeting in the last few years are standing up to what they're what they're meant to be doing. And for me, I need to change the whole story. It's not anymore talking about heroes of the past to try and learn from them. These are the heroes of today that we want to learn from them and tell their story. So I think that's something that will change also.
What gives you the most strength in everything? When you feel like going through those homes and it's just there's so much death and so much tragedy.
The first Shabbat, the first Friday night actually after, so a week into the story from October 7th, from Simchat Torah, the first Friday night, everybody came back from their missions. We had a kiddush, Friday night meal, in the base we were at. And one of the commanders, not specifically a religious person, after saying a word or two about the week, about Shabbat, even Parashat Shavua, asked everybody to put their hands on the shoulders of the people around them. And he asked the entire unit, and I'm talking about most of the people. I said the unit itself is all reservists. Most of them are in their later stage of reservists. So 35 and up, we have people in their 60s in the unit. Many of them with families who left everything behind and came to do this. Everybody standing around the Shabbat tables and singing Am Yisrael Chai. And that threw me back 2 months before that. In August, I was guiding a trip. And when we get to the Kotel, that's the song we sing. 2 months before that, I stood with 215 soldiers, commanders from one of the units in the south. That we did an entire Shabbat with them. This is through the Kotel with my family. I do every month or so, month and a half, we do an entire Shabbat with soldiers, again, talking about values. And one of the incredible moments of these Shabbatot is standing at the Kotel on Friday night, Kabbalat Shabbat, making a big circle in the upper plaza. And because it was summer, we had lots of birthright trips and lots of other tourists and visitors and Jews from around the world and around Yerushalayim. And for me, that was the biggest circle I've ever seen at the Kotel. And everybody singing Am Yisrael Chai. So these experiences from Friday night at the Kotel that I've had with Jews from outside Israel, from Israelis, Jews from inside Israel, everybody singing Am Yisrael Chai, throwing us to this Friday night meal was very, very powerful and uplifting. So I shared that story with the unit also at that moment, just to realize, to connect to everything that's going on around us. The 3 words are powerful. They're super powerful. We realize it in times like this. And in down and up, Am Yisrael Chai. We share this when we tell stories of heroism in Har Herzl. We share this when we stand in front of the Kotel. To see in this darkest moment, this is probably one of the darkest moments in life for many people living here today, definitely in Israel. Seeing what would happen, even people who didn't see it firsthand, hearing the stories, seeing the news articles, the survivors telling their stories, the heroic stories of the soldiers. But the words that really bring everybody together in this and uplift and allow us to stand up and look to the future are Am Yisrael Chai. In the past, present, and future.
What do you think it is, what Jewish values, what it is about the Jewish people or the land that it just keeps, whenever it's knocked down, it just keeps rebuilding itself?
It's our story. We're never the strongest. We're never the biggest nation in the world. Yet we kept remembering. For me, it's Jerusalem. Remembering there's a place on earth which is called Yerushalayim. We prayed towards it 3 times a day. We dreamt of it. We broke a glass in every wedding, remembering Yerushalayim. And this idea of a city that was destroyed and rebuilt, and we kept on coming to it. That is the story of the Jewish people. You can see it in specific buildings in the Chova in the old city. It was rebuilt 3 times. You can see it in almost every place you walk around here. The story of remembering. Jews remember the past and pass it down to our next generations to rebuild in the future. That's just our story. We have no other place. We have no other place to go to. We can be living everywhere as guests. This is the place where we're at home. My grandfather, to put in proportions, I also share this on many of the tours. My grandfather, 85 years ago, if you would have told him this day will come, we'll have our own country, our own people living here in Jerusalem, that's a dream come true. And yes, there's painful moments in these stories. But I think taking one step back, usually for me, putting things in context of the large historical picture, we're on the right path, And yeah, it's a painful moment, very painful. There's nothing to take off from that, but we will overcome because we have no other option.